So we have Joe Hoft coming up. Has anybody ever heard of the Gateway Pundit? And his brother Jim and Joe started the Gateway Pundit. He has the Joe Hoft Show. The Joe Hoft Show is on Frank's Beach. It's on Conservative Daily. And it's also, it's sent around the world. He has more followers than some of the TV news stations that they have, like on Fox News and whatnot. He has up to 3 to 4 million people watching his show on a regular basis. Joe Altman as well. They have people reaching around the world, which is just amazing with this message that they have. So I can tell you right now, it is an honor and a pleasure, and I call him my friend and just a fantastic patriot that we need in this world. Joe Hoft.
These numbers don't make sense. They're trying to tell us it's 3.4% mortality, and I said, that's not right. I've looked at it, and it was right there in front of anybody if they spent 15 minutes looking at these numbers the WHO was manufacturing. It was all a lie. They were commingling numbers. You guys are liars, and you know it. You covered up for the crimes in 2020. And here's the bomb. I wrote a piece last night at joehoft.com saying, hey, get ready, we're going to drop a bomb on this show today. Here's the bomb. Our FBI is corrupt beyond belief, and they covered up massive crimes across the country, but especially in Georgia. They're complicit with these crimes. How can I say that? Because they came in and they allowed these lies to go forward. They did not investigate. They could not have investigated because the evidence is there. We have the evidence, FBI. We have the evidence.
Hello, testing. Hi, my name's Joe Hoft. I'm happy to be here. I wish we had a little bit better weather, but it's not a hurricane. So, amen. Glad to be here. It's really an honor. I've met some great people here already. Have not spent a lot of time in Tennessee, but I'm really happy to be here and to meet everybody here and just grateful. I love the state because it's red and a lot of conservatives here, and we got to keep it that way. But you guys know there's probably rhinos here as well. And so we've got to deal with that, and we've got to deal with that now. We've got to deal with the elections. We've got to make sure that they can't steal this election anymore. We've got to demand integrity. So let me give you a little bit about myself, my past, and how I got here today, and just maybe we can finish up here with just talking about how we're going to save this next election, because it's a nightmare, and I'm going to tell you that from my professional background. So I grew up in Iowa. I've got a twin brother, Jim. Jim started the Gateway Pundit in 2004. It was back then. There wasn't a lot of websites out there yet. It was a unique idea that people were like, hey, we're not getting the news from the mainstream media. Maybe we'll start our own little blog, is what they called it. I didn't know what a blog was. Jim did this every day for years. At the same time, I was in the corporate world, kind of trying to climb that corporate ladder. Both of us located in St. Louis. Gateway stands for the Gateway Arch, Gateway to the West. St. Louis was the place where people crossed the Mississippi to head into freedom of the West. And that's where Gateway comes from. Pundit, obviously, is from the journalism and being a pundit. So Jim started that. I watched him. I was one of like 5 people that followed him for a number of years. And then he started growing. And he got other people that supported him, some other great writers. And they lifted him. And they gave him little kisses along the way when they would share his stories. And it was something that Jim did every day, day after day after day. And I watched this as his twin brother, admiring what he was doing. He wasn't making any money at the beginning, but he was trying to share a message. He was trying to share that message of a truth that we weren't getting in our media in around the year 2000. That's when he started, 2004. So what happened was he grew the Gateway Pundit. And at the same time, I'm in the corporate world, and I've got this unique job in St. Louis where I started traveling the world. I worked for a Fortune 500 firm, and they wanted the auditing team to go out and visit these sites that we were growing geographically to see if things were going on right, that actually what they were saying was accurate. And that was my job for really a number of years. I got to travel the world. I get into auditing, and I end up seeing the world. And, God works in mysterious ways, but who would imagine that as an auditor, you get to see the world? And so I went to all these fantastic cities, places, climbing that corporate ladder, getting to see all these great people, met people around the world, beautiful people around the world, just like here in Tennessee, just like in Oregon where I was at a couple weeks ago, across the Midwest, across the states, to Florida where I live now. Great people. This country is great with great people, and there's great people around this world, but this is a great country, and this media, these liars want to tell us that there's something wrong with us, that we're mean, that we're racist, and all this other garbage. It's just not true. It never was true. But that's part of their agenda, to destroy this great country, is to make us feel guilty, like we should do more and more and more. So I've seen that, and I went around the world and I realized we have a great country. Our media was toxic, though, and a lot of people overseas would say, Joe, when Trump came along, why do you like Trump, Joe? They're getting CNN as their information. And so it was garbage. Anyways, my path led to overseeing, after being this auditor going around the world, they put me in charge of the financials of $1 billion block of business that grew into $2 billion. And I'm trying to figure out where all this money's coming from around the world in this segment, Asia Pacific. Big job, really complex, really hard. Worked my fanny off day and night, and for about 4 years. Then I got the opportunity to move to Hong Kong, where they had me create an audit team for this Fortune 500 firm. And I lived there for about 9-10 years. And I got to see the world. I was so blessed in so many ways. At the same time, Jim's building the Gateway Pundit. Around 2016, I called Jim, and we're talking about every day, all the time. And I tell my twin brother, I said, Jim, I think Ted Cruz is going to be gone in a month. I could tell him the day. And my numbers is my forte, and that's what I do, is look at numbers. And so, anyways, I wrote a piece up for Jim. Drudge Report picked it up. Back then in 2016, if you remember, if you had the story on Drudge, a link at Drudge, it was huge. And Jim loved it because that meant more people are coming to your website. It was driving volume, and volume is how you make money on websites, and that's what we've learned. And so what happened was I got some real success with that. Ended up, I was absolutely accurate. I'm in Hong Kong. I'm taking a ferry to work one morning, and realizing that I got the top story in the world. I got the top story at Drudge 2 days in a row. So that got me hooked, and I started writing for Jim every day, even though I had this full-time position in Hong Kong. At the same time, I'm going around to audit committees around the world. I can remember going to an audit committee board meetings in Australia, sitting there. I'd always sit on one side of the table where I could look out the window and see the Opera House here and the Sydney Harbor Bridge here. And I'm just getting to meet great people, executives from around the world and the country, and board members, et cetera. I had a great job. I had something that was really great. And then I started helping out for my country by writing at the Gateway Pundit with Jim every day. And then what happened, and I share this here, there was that clip at the very beginning where I'm talking with Joe Altman. I was on his show. And I pointed out how, Joe, I saw in 2020, I'm in Hong Kong when COVID came down. And I was actually in China on January 1st, 2020, about 100 miles from Wuhan. And because my wife's Chinese, I married a Chinese girl. And we were at her family's. And anyways, we started talking about what's going on in China. I was on this risk team in Hong Kong because we'd had this period of time where there was protests. People were protesting China. And I don't know if you guys know it, but China ended up taking over Hong Kong during these last few years, using COVID as a vehicle to really hammer the people there and take away their rights. And what they did is they came in and they replaced their executive. Think of that. They call it the CEO in Hong Kong. It's their president. They replaced that president, and now whoever runs for CEO has to go to China first to get blessed by the Chinese, and then that's who's going to be eligible for people to vote on. And they have two people go to China. So now it's a Chinese president. They started with the president. Now this is kind of scary, isn't it? They started with the president, and then they went to the second level, which was their equivalent of the Senate, and that's now all Chinese. And around that time period, that was all Chinese. The lower house, probably the equivalent of our Congress. What they did there is they had an election in 2019, about the time of these protests. 95% of the candidates that won were all anti-China. They didn't want China to take over Hong Kong. So what they did is they ruled that the lower legislatures no longer has any power. And that's how, and then COVID came along, and anybody that protested, they just arrested and threw in prison. And so I'm on Joe Altman's show talking about this COVID thing back in, and what happened was in March, the WHO, as you recall, came out and said, hey, this is 3.4% mortality. Well, that was just right up my alley. I looked at the numbers and in 15 minutes could see this is a lie. It's closer to the flu. I wrote a piece at the Gateway Pundit. Alex Jones had us on InfoWars the next day, me in Hong Kong, Jim here in the States. And then the next day, Media Matters doxed me, DOX doxed me. And what that meant is they said, Joe Hoft, who works at this company in Hong Kong, wrote this piece, and it's just terrible what he wrote. And Media Matters, you may not know, this was an entity that was formed by George Soros with his funding. John Podesta, the nasty, sick Podesta brothers, ran it for a while. He brought in some snakes as well. And their whole business plan is to attack conservatives and conservative speech and to attempt to make you into a liar when you're telling the truth. And so what happened is then a bunch of people, they had people write my company, and within about a couple months, I was retiring and coming back to the States. And it was a sad situation because I loved my company. They loved me. I tell you what, I'll just maybe brag a minute. In 2019, I had 20 years with that company. I'm overseas in Hong Kong. They call a Friday meeting for the entire office, second largest office our company had in the world. And they brought me into the break room that Friday and said, hey, the reason we're here today is because Joe just got 20 years at this company. And they said, and in Hong Kong, it hadn't even been around barely 20 years. And so the guy that ran that office, who was a good friend, all these executives are my good friends, he says to me, Joe, you know, not many people here have ever been to the States, maybe never will be to the States, but they get their information from the media, et cetera, and they get it from you, because I was the only guy from the U.S. in that office. And he says, Joe, you give them a good perception of America. And that really meant a lot to me, especially looking back. It was a blessing because 6 months later, I'm going to find myself heading back to the States, retiring from this great company that I'd been working at for a long time. So maybe lesson one is these guys, they want to harm us. They don't want us to tell the truth. The truth is their enemy. They hate the truth because we're the ones sharing the truth. And you know what? Here's a tidbit. We are winning. We are winning the truth battle, and they hate us. And we can prove it. Rasmussen came out with a poll about a year ago. They said 62% of Americans believe the 2020 election was stolen. They came out with another poll that says 65% believe January 6th was a setup. They're not getting that information from the mainstream media. They're not getting that information from cable media. They're getting the total opposite. But you guys, we all know it. And the way we're winning is by events like this, getting together. I think the most important way that we communicate is person to person, over the table, or over a cup of coffee or whatever. And the best thing that we can do is just get informed, get the best information we can, so that when we talk to somebody and there's somebody there with us that needs to know the truth, because that's what it's all about. Truth is on the side of God. This other stuff is nasty. It's evil. They want to hurt us for sharing that stuff. And so we can do it, and we are doing it. And I think that this country is at least, I think it's 2/3 conservative. Maybe more, maybe 70%. They came out with a poll that said, Rasmussen, not long ago, 70% of Americans, voting Americans, now believe that it's like we're living in a police state. So we're winning. People, we are winning. And the thing that happened next was, anyways, I got doxxed for that. I come back. I realized one thing, and I was talking to this lady, Amy, who's going to talk later with the JFK group. Go JFK, right? I'm so glad you're here. I was talking to her, and it's like they wanted to tear down that story that I was saying COVID's not going to be that bad. As I look back, because they needed fear. Fear is another tool that they use. They lie and use fear to prevent us or to make us do things that we'd normally never do. And so I realized that. Then came the 2020 election. I came back, started writing with Jim full time, and we were knocking it out of the park with story after story after story because there's so much there. And then came the election. I put some stories up about Hunter Biden that nobody else ever saw. And my stories were about how, I was talking to some guys earlier, it's how seedy and disgusting and gross this Biden family is. They are an embarrassment to anybody. They're disgusting, and not even talking about the financial, BS that they've been doing. So we started writing this, and then came the election, and I started, with my background, I started saying, this ain't right. And you know what? We all said that. We all said it. The next morning, we wake up, it's like, what's going on? We all knew it was garbage. And I'm here to tell you, my background's in finance and corporate. I'm a corporate executive, done audits around the world. And you have to have certain things in place when you validate a financial audit, for example. You have to ensure 3 things today for sure. Well, one, you have to make sure your systems work. There can't be security issues. We found out these Dominion systems in Georgia by the government's own report, so I wrote about it in my books. I got 3 books back there about the election, which were really a synopsis of my articles at Gateway Pundit. If you have a system that's broken, that has no security, you shut it down. In the corporate world, you shut it down right now. You don't wait, you shut it down. We cannot in this world have somebody come in and shoot malware into our systems. We cannot have somebody come in and steal our intellectual property. It's a no-brainer. But we got these systems, they were validated that they have security issues. They're going to use them again in 3 weeks. Or whatever it is, 30 days. It's outrageous what's going on. So you got to have systems that work, that are audited by some really smart people. These systems we cannot audit. We can't. How does a county office have 100 of these machines that they're supposed to be accountable for and validate that they're all certifiable? They don't have the staff to do that. The professionals are not. In the corporate world, we've got professionals that are smart, that this is their living, and they validate it. We're not even coming close with these election systems. The second thing we need is we need evidence. When you say you have an invoice, you got to show us the evidence. As a professional auditor, I'm not signing off on it. I'm not going to sign off. If you there's a $100 million invoice, Joe. It looks like it's made with a crayon, but that you're just going to have to trust us. That's the best we got right now. Well, as a professional auditor, you're not going to certify stuff like that. You're going to validate everything. That's what we do. We have to. We don't want to see the company go bankrupt. We don't want to get in problems ourselves for certifying a bogus, financial result. So you got to have the evidence. In Georgia, again, they got 140,000 ballots to this day they won't let us look at. The Secretary of State's working with Fulton County to prevent us from looking at these ballots because 6 people said, hey, we looked at these ballots, they all look like carbon copies. So we can't see them. It's almost time for our next election. We still haven't been able to see those. And thirdly, the thing that we need the most, so it's outrageous what's going on. That's just one county in America. The third thing that's maybe the most disastrous is the processes. In the corporate world, they started Sarbanes-Oxley back in around the year 2003 or 4. And what they did is they mandated every corporation not just sign off on the financials by looking at the systems and validating all the information. You now have to sign off on the processes. So every corporation, it was a massive job, cost millions of dollars for corporations to do this, especially if you're around the world. You had to look at all your key processes and all your key locations, and then look at all the activities that are performed in those processes. Let's say in the election process, we might say voter roll, or we might say the election machine, or we might say absentee ballots. Whatever that process, you got to dig into it, look at the key activities, and then you have to test it. And you have to validate that these processes are working properly. And we cannot sign off on the financials until we are convinced that everything's proper. We spend a lot of time and money doing this. By the way, Joe Biden, when he was vice president and he was overseeing China for Barack Obama, he allowed China not to have to abide by Sarbanes-Oxley. I'm telling you from somebody who's done audits in China, that's the dumbest thing you could ever do. You want China, you want their stuff audited inside and out. They have a different culture than ours, and their culture is, if we can get away with it, we're going to get away with it. And we don't want that culture here. We've got people of integrity here. Everybody here, integrity. But you still have to, like Reagan said, trust but verify. We have to go through this exercise every year. We have to validate every process is working. If it fails, then we have to retest it, fix things and retest it. This is what we do in our financials, but in the election process, we ignore it. Think of the processes. My God, we're seeing people bring ballots in the middle of the night. This stuff's outrageous. So as I started going through what happened in 2020, my summary was this. This comes from a professional auditor. I've done audits around the world. It says, my summary is, this election never should have been certified. I say that over and over and over. It's a joke. And I love saying it to you guys. You're right. You don't have to be a professional auditor. It's common sense. This stuff's insane. And so that's what, so I wrote these books about that, and President Trump gave me a real nice note, sent me an email, or not an email, a letter, signed it and said, Joe, way to go. Way to go. Look forward to your next volume. And Rudy Giuliani's given me some great kudos. And Roger Stone tells me, Joe, if anybody says that there was no steal, I send them your 3 books. He's told me these are going to come down as classics. So anyways, it's been an honor. It's been tough, though. For sharing the truth, we get sued. We got 400 or so attorneys coming against me and Jim and the Gateway Pundit in a bogus case where we were just reporting the truth. And this is what's going on today. They want to attack us. But what's the response? So what do we do? When you're telling the truth and you're being told, stop it. We'll take away your job. We'll take away your income. We'll persecute you through the courts. Like Rudy Giuliani, the stuff that beautiful, one of the greatest American statesmen in history, let alone today. What he has to go through, it's outrageous. The same people sued him. You know what you do? You stand up, you tell these people to go to hell, that we're going to keep sharing the truth, and we don't give a damn what they do or say to us. We are going to share the truth because we are winning.